TV shows and movies often portray a Thanksgiving custom of people gathered around a table, taking turns sharing all of the things that they are thankful for. They seem really into it. They're delighted to do this. It's easy for them to come up with a list of things that they are thankful for. And their sincere tributes bring smiles for the others around the table as they feel the warmth of that gathering in their souls. Maybe you've experienced this firsthand, or maybe if you're a little bit like me, you might be cynical and think that it's a little bit too trite or forced at times. But it is a good start for a civic holiday. But there's more. There's so much more. Don't forget the main course. We've just heard readings to remind us that the center of this night, the center of this holiday, is on the one who is in the kitchen, the one who generously provides all the persons, places, and things that we are thankful for, God who gives all good gifts. Beloveds, there would be no gifts without the giver. There would be no blessings without the one whose unconditional love is everlasting, whose faithfulness endures from age to age. Our readings this night point and ground us in this. From the Hebrew scripture, we hear a highlight of God who, as creator, provided us with the land and its bounty, and as liberator gives us our story of blessing throughout all time. The annual Jewish harvest festival, called the Feast of Weeks, is the setting for this reading. It celebrates the first fruits of the land, offering back to God in thanks. As people bring their offerings, they worship, remembering and proclaiming God's gracious acts for Israel. And then in the letter to the church in Philippi, Paul offers encouragement for us to connect with God by both asking and thanking. A needy please and an acknowledging thank you are two sides of the same coin, since God is always with us to listen and to give us peace, no matter what situation we find ourselves in. So replace your worry, Paul says. Be thankful and focus on joy, on everything that is worthy of praise. And the gospel tells us how God, the giver, moves even closer, becoming the gift itself. The day after he multiplies bread to feed 5,000, Jesus is pursued by crowds, clamoring for more, wanting more bread. Recalling the image of manna in the wilderness, Jesus promises to provide the true bread from heaven, bread that will never fail. Of course, Jesus himself is that bread of life in times of peace and plenty, in times of fear and scarcity. Thanksgiving reminds us that compassion and solidarity make for a powerful bond between God and creation. This bond is expressed in German pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer's poem, Christians and Heathens, written in 1944, 2 days before he participated in the failed attempt to kill Hitler. Bonhoeffer sees living in the world as a Christian as partaking in the sufferings of Christ, because God is with all people. He concludes, people draw near to God in their distress, pleading for help and begging peace and bread, rescue from guilt and sickness, nearly dead. Christian or not, all come in helplessness. People draw near when they see God's distress, find God rejected, homeless, without bread, burdened with sin and weakness, nearly dead. Christians reach out to meet God's wretchedness. And God draws near to people in distress, feeding their souls and body with his bread. Christian or not, for both he's hanging dead, forgiving from the cross their wickedness. God draws near and feeds us in times of our own and our nation's distress. We are reminded that when Jesus feeds the multitude, that they cry out and clamor for more. Unsatisfied, they want more, they want signs, they want more of Jesus the Christ. And if we admit it, when we are fed, when we receive blessing, we too clamor for more. Getting distressed and ending up seeking to consume that which perishes in our world, those things that we set our hearts on which cannot satisfy. Selfish consumerism is built upon this. So we get caught in this cyclical pattern of feeding our desire, making our hearts race as we shop, satisfying that desire temporarily when we make purchases, and then falling out of love with what we have just bought, causing the cycle to continue as the shine wears off, as the purchases fade away or are physically consumed. We're drawn to new and improved options, and so we continue to feed that materialistic hunger. Thankfully, Jesus the Christ invites us to recognize in this pattern of unfulfilled desire the hint of a higher good, the one that will satisfy. He reminds that it was not Moses who gave us the bread from heaven, but God the Father who gives the true bread from heaven. And he underscores that by saying, I am the bread of life. As C.S. Lewis observed, our problem is not our desires are too strong, rather our desires are too weak. Kay and I have good friends who are agnostic and Jewish. They've decided to raise their children Jewish, and our friend is the treasurer of their synagogue. And so we've had opportunity to share several Passover Seders. And one of my favorite parts of that experience is the singing that takes place, the grace that happens not before the meal, but after the meal. Our Jewish brothers and sisters who have lived within the narrative of God's salvation longer than the rest of us sing to express thanksgiving with unmatched passion. Here are some of the verses of Dayenu, which means it would have been enough. If God had supplied our needs in the desert for 40 years and had not fed us with the manna, it would have been enough. If God had fed us the manna and had not given us the Sabbath, it would have been enough. If God had given us the Sabbath and had not brought us before Mount Sinai, it would have been enough. If God had brought us before Mount Sinai and had not given us the Torah, it would have been enough. If God had given us the Torah and had not brought us into the land of Israel, it would have been enough. Beloveds, this song is about being grateful to God for all of the gifts that God has given to God's people. Taking them out of slavery, giving them the Torah and Shabbat, and had God only given one of these gifts that they give thanks for, it would have still been enough. The song shows gratitude for them as a whole. I think we have something to learn from our brothers and sisters. And for we who follow Jesus, I think we can add to these verses. We can give thanks for those things that our Abrahamic brothers and sisters have given thanks for, and we as followers of Jesus can add a few more verses to this. If our Creator had given us God's own Son and had not brought Jesus again from the dead, it would have been enough. If our Creator had brought Jesus again from the dead and had not poured out God's Spirit upon us, it would have been enough. If our Creator had poured out God's Spirit and had not given us to the world as a sign of God's love, it would have been enough. May your thanksgiving be one of gratitude for God who creates, redeems, and sustains us, doing that through our daily bread of life, Jesus. Dayenu, it is enough.